I already know there's no love greater than God's love. You're not telling me something I don't already know. I know there's no power greater than God's love, God's power. I understand that. And I already know that there's no knowledge and wisdom that's greater than God's knowledge. I got that, preacher, but what in the world does that have to do with what you said your sermon was about? And that was seeing something that God had not seen. Amen. Well, I'm glad you asked. Yes. You see, I have a natural love for people. I want to help people. Yeah. I've been doing it for a long time. I love to do it. When I get a chance to help, I want to be there. I want people to be better people. I want to be better because I want to have better lives because I did something that helped them to get to the point that they had a better life. I want to do that. I've had interactions with people all up and down the East Coast and even other parts of the country, even in other countries. But I've still seen people who have the capacity to love that exceeded my own. I've seen people who would give more than I would give, sacrifice more than I would sacrifice. I've seen and met people in my lifetime who were just like that. But God has never seen anyone whose capacity to love exceeded his own. I'm 6'5" and over 300 pounds. Most people think I'm a pretty strong fellow. My power to reason out solutions to problems has been documented by the awards and other successes that I've had in my life. But I've seen people who are more powerful than me. Yeah. God has never seen someone more powerful than him. I've been blessed to have studied under great minds and read numerous books and been labeled academically gifted, and I even have a high IQ, but I've still seen people who are more knowledgeable and more intelligent than me. God has never seen someone with more knowledge and more wisdom than him. Now, since you know that God has the greatest love and he has the greatest power and he has the greatest knowledge, why don't you start acting like this? You see, your money gets low and so you run to Tom and you run to Dick and you run to Harry, but you should first run to God. Your spouse starts acting crazy, and so you run to Tom and you run to Dick and you run to Harry, but you should first run to God. Your children won't do right, and so you run to Tom and you run to Dick and you run to Harry, but you should first run to God. You get sick in your body and you run to Dr. Tom and you run to Dr. Dick and you run to Dr. Harry, but you should first run to Dr. Jesus. You see, I understand that my first place to go as a child of God is not to man, but it has to be to God. God's the one who made me. God's the one who's delivering me. God's the one who's going to give me my new body anyway. God's the one who's going to take me back to glory. So if I need help with anything, I need to go see God first. Jeremiah the 17th chapter. It reads that cursed is the one who trusts in man, who depends on flesh for his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. He will be like a bush in the wastelands. He will not see prosperity when it comes. He will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in a salt land where no one lives. But blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. He will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought. Never fails to bear fruit. How many of y'all are like that? That you're like that tree. We sing about it. We preach about it. We talk about it. But how many of you are really like that tree? Planted by the stream, planted by the river. That really isn't worried about what's coming down the road. If things get lean, it's all right. Your roots are in the river. You don't worry about anything. You're going to stay free. You still bear fruit. Even in the midst of drought, even in the midst of your storm, you're able to stand anyway because God has planted you in a good place. How many of you are really, really like that? Or are you more like the ones that every time they want, they're going to run here and run there and run everywhere? When they run out of places to run, then they run to God. Paul says in 1 Corinthians that we know in part, we prophesy in part. When perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. Well, I say, if we can depend on, how can we depend on the mind of man when we have full access to God? Yeah. How is it that when we know that all of the best stuff is with God, we run in all these secondary cheap little places? If I know my healing is going to come from God, he may send me to a doctor, and I'm not knocking doctors. Doctors have their place. God uses them like he uses anything else. But I'm going to go to God first, even before I see the doctor. It wasn't that many years ago. I don't know if I've told this here before, but wasn't that many years ago that I went in someplace, and I went in for, I'm at that age, and I had to check your prostate and all of that, and I went in, and they wanted to do a CT scan just to make sure that everything was all right. I said, well, while you're there, just check everything down there. So he does. And I get the radiology report back, and it said that I had liver cancer. This was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Said I had liver cancer. So I went back to my doctor and looking at the report, and they sent me somewhere to get another check. And when I went to get that check, 2 weeks later, they came back and said that not only did I have liver cancer, but it had spread. Well, I didn't say anything when I prayed to God, because I'm not dumb. I know how the liver cancer thing goes. There's no cure, or so man says. And so I said, well, this is what it is. It is what it is. It's my time to go. It's my time to go. And I prayed about it, didn't say anything about it. And finally, my GI doctor, after about 6 weeks, called and begged me to come in to see him and to get an appointment to get another check. And so as we're talking, they were going to take me down to one of the clinics in Fayetteville, and they wanted to get a biopsy to figure out what type of liver cancer it was, so they could figure out how to try to slow it down and increase the quality of my life and all of that. And I said, well, we'll do that. I said, but the Lord spoke to me and said, no, you can't do it here. And you either need to go to Chapel Hill or to Duke. So they sent me up to go to Duke University. I go to Duke University, and I get there, and they're going to do this biopsy, so they go and do the ultrasound, and the lady comes in and does the ultrasound, and she's checking me out, and I notice her face didn't look right. And so she leaves the room, and she comes back with another one. And there's 2 radiologists down there, and they're checking out where they want to, pull from this tumor to see what's going on. And so, they kind of looked, and they started looking at the chart that I brought with me, and they still weren't satisfied. And they went and got a third person. All 3 of them came back. Well, they still weren't satisfied. So they went back and got a 4th one. At that time, they went back to a back room, but I'm laying on this table. I can see everything. And so I'm up there looking at what's going on, and I watch what's going on. I see that they seem to be very perplexed. And a 5th one came back in the room, and the 6th one came back. And they got stuff all over this room looking at everything, and I'm thinking, this is really bad. And so they all left the room. And about 15 minutes later, I'm laying on this cold steel table. I'm just laying there. They said, "It's the prettiest black woman you wanted to see." I knew it was bad then. And she said, "Well, Mr. Bowden, we're really sorry to tell you this, but we don't know why you're here." I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "Well, we're looking at the charts, and we can tell this chart you brought, this is definitely you. But we don't see what's in that chart when we look here. We don't see anything at all. You don't have any cancer." I said, "Would you mind if we do one more test?" So I said, "Sure." So they rushed me back and put me in the line in front of everybody else, and they ran another test, and I'm trying to get my clothes on. This woman walks in the door as I'm getting on my clothes, and so I knew it was bad again. And she said, "Mr. Bowden, we are so sorry, but you should have been up here. You don't have cancer. We can't find any cancer in you at all." That was about 3.5 years ago. Now, I know that God can heal. Now, I didn't run to everybody and start crying and complaining. Nobody saw me moaning and groaning because I knew I was going to die. I mean, I had already resolved I was going to die. But I prayed to God and said, whatever you're going to do, you're going to do. And I left it there. So I know God is in the healing business. Now, I had a doctor once tell me this. He said, "Now, no, Bowden, what you had here was a misdiagnosis." And I said, as he spoke, the Lord spoke to me, and he said, well, if it was a misdiagnosis, God was still in the mix. Because one of the things the doctors told me up there was, if they had gone in and they wanted to take a biopsy, if they had done that, there is a tumor that is in my liver. But they said it's not cancerous. And if they had taken a piece of that tumor, the kind of tumor it is, I would have bled to death on the table. But everyone sent me back to the doctors that had already decided I had cancer. So even if they made a misdiagnosis, my God there, God has spoken to me to go somewhere else, I wouldn't be here today anyway. So no matter how you want to look at it, I know God had a hand in it. I'm here today because of the grace of God. And so because I know what the power of God is, and I know what God is able to do, how is it then that we don't depend on him first in all that we do? And so I know that God is able to strive. I know God is able to deliver. I know that everything in this church that you need, God's already got it. But you got to believe and have faith and then still do the right thing. I've seen something that God has not seen.